What up, college football fans? It's the one and only Cole Thompson here, and Brian Kelly is not mincing words when talking about the future of LSU football, at least the way he wants to dissolve the program. He recently did an interview with local media down in Baton Rouge right after the end of spring practice, right after the second wave of the portal, and he started talking about how they're not interested in buying players in an era known where NIL is going to reign supreme. And a lot of people have opinions on it, myself included, but I figured today, let's actually break down what he means by buying players in an NIL era. But if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure that you do. Make sure that you also like the video, hit the ring notification down below. That way you don't miss a single episode of Just Saying It. And make sure that you tell your friends, your family, your mortal enemies, best of pros, college football fans, SEC faithful, and LSU Tigers everywhere about this channel. Because we're talking college football every single day leading up to week 1 and well into the chaotic 2024 season that is going to feature a dozen teams in the playoffs. And of course, we're trying to become not just the #1 YouTube show talking about our favorite sport, but also the #1 college football community here on YouTube. Make sure that you follow me on social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at Mr. Cole Thompson. And if you have a question you would want read live on air, slide the DMs on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson or email me at colethompsonwriting@gmail.com. So recently, doing an interview with one of the local television stations at Tiger Stadium, Brian Kelly starts talking about NIL, starts talking about how one of the major positions of weakness was the defensive line. And that is basically common knowledge at this point. You don't lose Mekhi Wingo and Mason Smith and feel completely content about replacing those type of players. And so they were in the transfer portal. He even brought up that they needed to go ahead and address the position. And lo and behold, they didn't get the right players. But why? Well, according to the likes of Kelly, unfortunately, right now, that's what some guys are looking for. Buying players. We're not in the market of buying players. The exact quote, if you like all the things that we do here in developing players, bringing you into a championship program, playing in front of the best fans in America, playing for championships and having an opportunity for NIL, you should be a Tiger. But if you just want to get paid, it's not the place for you. And of course, people heard literally one part of that. We're not interested in buying players and decided to go ahead and come to their own foregone conclusions. Well, Kelly is not entirely wrong because of when you are spending money, a lot of people are saying, well, LSU's just got to be broke. They're not the same level as Alabama. They're not the same level as Ole Miss. They're not the same level as Georgia because you look at what they've done in the portal. They've been able to bring in prime candidates to set the tone in 2024, and LSU is just sitting idly. Really? You're really going to go ahead and try and sell yourself that Brian Kelly, LSU, one of the more formidable, one of the more foundational programs in the SEC, doesn't have the bills to cash out massive deals? Come on. Who are you trying to fool? Who are you trying to pull the wool over the eyes on this one? What this is about setting a culture, setting a standard, setting a provocative. And for right now, it kind of works. Kelly also mentioned things that are very prevalent in the world of where NIL was still being at the very baseline when he arrived down in Louisiana to where it is now. He's been able to produce talent, really good talent. 3 first-round picks this past season. Lit Neighbors, Brian Thomas, Jane Daniels, 1 Heisman Trophy winner. That basically put up similar, if not better numbers than Joe Burrow before making it to the college football playoff. That's really what separates the two. He also got 2 great defensive linemen to be able to be early selections. Mekhi Wingo, Mason Smith. Smith was a second-round pick. So there is a proof of concept. And this is LSU we're talking about. They always find a way to be able to produce the right amount of talent. But at the same time, what you're trying to also establish is a consistent basis where every single year, you're not having to load up in the transfer portal. You're not having to worry about winning at the top 5 recruiting class. It'd be great if you did, but you do so on certain limitations because if you want players to be developed and they want to put football first. That's all this is. That's all this comes down to. It's not about the nickels and dimes. It's all about making sure that you get the right X's and O's formulating together that will prove you have a foundation in place well past just this season. Because it's one thing to be able to go ahead and fortify yourself with all these transfers. But at the same time, let's say they don't pan out. Well, then there's backlash. There's people saying you have no idea what you're doing when it comes to developing talent. There's no idea that there is a bright future. And then also, when you do hit with all of these transfers, you got to do it again and again and again and again and again. And what you want is a common ground. Now, the one thing I will say is in a new era of college football, it's still so youthful. We have no idea what NIL is truly going to be over time. It may end up being a big blessing. It may end up being one of the worst curses. Who the hell knows what is going on in the world of NIL past this season? But until proven otherwise, you do it your own way. Brian Kelly's got back-to-back 10-win seasons. Brian Kelly saw the way this defense played last year and immediately said, not doing it again. And they have a potent offense coming back this season. Headlined by Will Campbell, headlined by Garrett Nussmeier, headlined by two new wide receivers, Xavier Thomas, as well as CJ Daniels, Kyron Lacey back there. You have a good run game. You don't want to have the same problems. So you're seeing change. You're seeing adaptability because if he had to adapt. What happens if a year from now, when LSU is 8-4, and that doesn't cut it for those in Baton Rouge, does the tune change? It kind of has to, because if it doesn't, you're out of a job. And if it doesn't, well, at that point, you can hold on to your laurels for as long as humanly possible, but that will only keep you warm at night for as long as the money keeps on flowing in. And right now, the money won't be flowing in that long if you don't make those changes. But as of right now, it's hard to argue with Kelly because if he's proven over this short amount of time, it can work. And I'm not saying that you don't need to utilize NIL in your favor. You should. But I completely get the notion. Do me a favor. If you say to yourself, one guy that you can bring in is literally going to cost you $3 million in NIL per season, is it worth it? Well, it also depends on where you are as a team. It also depends on where you are as a roster. And it also depends on how many years you're going to be on that campus. That's another key element here. To me, when you're able to go get a grad transfer for a 1-year rental deal before he goes to the NFL, maybe you're willing to splurge a little bit more. Maybe the difference between $750,000 and $850,000 could be the reason why you touch down on campus. And at that point, boosters might be willing to go ahead and give a little bit more funds. But also, they may say otherwise. No thanks. We're good for a 3-year player. And at the same time, when it's also a 3-year player, who says that they're not going to want more and in 2 seasons they'll transfer before you actually hit your stride? It happens all the time. You saw it just in the SEC with one school known for its prominence when it comes to working the portal. They lose a player because they didn't have enough funds to be able to keep him around, and he went for the money. That's going to be the case for some players. And so for Brian Kelly, the entire enigma, the entire persona around his team is about building a foundation well past this year. We want not just great players. We want the right players. We want players that will put football first and money second. And it's great if you want to go ahead and cash in, but don't you want to be a team that year in and year out finds yourself in Atlanta, finds yourself in the college football playoff, finds yourself a game or two away from potentially hoisting up a national title? And then the season afterwards, you know that the player behind him has followed the same precedence, has followed the same aura, the same mantra. And guess what? You're right back in the saddle. You're right back at square one, and you're not having to hit the reset button like other teams do. For some teams, it's an all-in year because it has to be an all-in year. For Brian Kelly, this is a year where maybe he says, I'm okay with going 10-3 once again. 10-3 is good enough to get me to the college football playoff. Until it doesn't work, I think you're allowed to have that moment. It's the same thing I said about Deion. It's the same thing I said about Dabo. So why am I going to change my tune when it comes to Brian Kelly? I've already told you, when it comes to Deion Sanders, work the transfer portal. Do what you want. But when it doesn't work for a second time, okay, now you have your answer. For Dabo, we don't want to work the transfer portal. We don't want to use NIL. We don't want to touch those type of lucrative deals, and we want to be your first and only choice. Okay, for now it works until it doesn't. And then you have your answer. For Brian Kelly right now, add in the right players. We're not interested in buying players, which, by the way, that's not what he's saying. He's saying we're not interested in spending lucrative money for players that literally are only trying to cash in on a profit. That's it. He's not saying we're not willing to spend. And LSU would be foolish to actually come out and be like, whoa, no, we're not going to spend. They're always going to spend. It's LS-freaking-U. They're always going to put their money where their mouth is. But it's got to be for the right player. It's got to be for the right person. And it's got to be for the right culture fit for this team. So that way that sustainable success is brought back year in and year out. And until proven otherwise, when it doesn't work, Brian Kelly has a leg to stand on because right now he's got a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. He's got a slew of players that he's recruited both at Notre Dame and at LSU that have been first-round picks and household names in the NFL, and he's been able to transform that talent. That talent maybe didn't get a lot of NIL money, but they're really cashing in at age 23 through 25 at the next level. And they're becoming fixtures that are going to get massive paydays in the not so distant future by NFL teams that have basically banks that can back up the brink trucks and go ahead and say, whatever, we don't really need this much money. But let me know your thoughts down below. Where do you stand on the Brian Kelly comments made about buying players? Do you think it's that big of a deal? Do you think it's a big problem? Do you think that LSU is in trouble this year because they didn't get a defensive lineman? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you hit subscribe, hit the ring notification on the side. That way you don't miss a single episode of Just Saying It. Make sure you're following me on all the socials at Mr. Cole Thompson, and make sure you tell your friends, family, mortal enemies, best of bros, Tiger fans everywhere about this channel, because we're on the race to not only become the #1 YouTube show talking about our favorite sport, but also the #1 college football community on YouTube. Until next time, Tiger fans. Until next time, SEC fans. Until next time, all the college football faithful. I am Cole Thompson. And in the great words of Tom Petty, take it easy.